Fresh intelligence leaks are now raising serious questions about Donald Trump's claims surrounding the Iran blockade strategy. A reported CIA assessment suggests the numbers behind Trump's Iran war narrative may not fully match battlefield realities. Despite the blockade pressure, intelligence officials reportedly believe Tehran could survive a Hormuz shutdown for several more months. Even as Trump projects confidence, intelligence assessments reportedly reveal major concerns about America's long-term strategy against Iran. While Iran and the United States exchanged fire in Hormuz, Trump's own spy agency reportedly made a shocking revelation about Tehran's resilience. New intelligence findings now appear to contradict President Donald Trump's aggressive pressure campaign and blockade narrative against Iran recently. The Central Intelligence Agency reportedly believes Iran could survive an American blockade for several months despite growing military and economic pressure. According to intelligence assessments cited on May 7, Tehran may withstand the blockade for nearly 90 to 120 days. Officials familiar with the classified report reportedly said Iran could potentially endure the blockade for an even longer period strategically. The CIA also concluded that Iran still retains major missile and drone capabilities despite continued attacks from the United States and Israel. The assessment found Tehran could avoid immediate economic collapse by relying on crude stockpiles and alternative smuggling routes effectively. These findings sharply contrast with Trump's repeated claims that the blockade is already inflicting severe damage on Iran's struggling economy. Trump had announced a U.S. naval blockade targeting Iranian ports across the Strait of Hormuz region on April 12. U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a fresh ultimatum to Iran, this time giving Tehran 3 days. Trump told Fox News that Iran now has 3 days before its oil pipelines explode from within. He also claimed there would be permanent damage to Iran's oil wells if oil flow is not restored. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "What happens is that line explodes from within. Both mechanically and in the earth. Something happens where it just explodes, and they say they only have about 3 days left before that happens. And when it explodes, you can never rebuild it the way it is. It's a very powerful thing that takes place sort of having to do with nature." Unquote. According to Trump, the ongoing U.S. blockade would create catastrophic mechanical stress inside Iran's oil infrastructure. He further claimed that this pressure could trigger spontaneous explosions underground and within transport lines. However, energy experts say pipelines are typically equipped with safety valves and sensors designed to halt pumping before such failure spiral. They also note that if oil cannot move through the system, operators usually stop production at the source itself. That is why some experts believe Iran may still have roughly 2 to 3 months of inland storage before any forced production cut becomes necessary. Iran's vice president and head of the Strategic Energy Policy and Management Organization, Ismail Sagab Esfahani, has also reacted. Esfahani warned that Iran would retaliate against countries backing any damage to its oil sector. In a sharp response on X, he said, "Our math is different. 1 oil well equals 4 oil wells." Ismail Sagab Esfahani said, and I quote, "If any part of our infrastructure, including oil wells, is damaged as a result of a blockade, we guarantee that 4 times the damage will be inflicted on the same infrastructure in countries that support the aggressor. Our math is different. 1 oil well equals 4 oil wells." Unquote. Despite an intense U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports, new data suggests the strategy is far from airtight, with Tehran continuing to export oil in ways that undercut American pressure. The blockade, imposed on April 13th, was designed to choke off Iran's primary source of revenue by restricting ships going to and from Iranian ports, especially those carrying crude. However, evidence from satellite and tanker tracking platforms indicates that Iran has still been able to load and move significant volumes of crude oil even under the restrictions. Satellite-based maritime data showed that at least 4.6 million barrels of oil were loaded onto Iranian-linked vessels since the blockade went into effect, a figure that highlights the persistence of the export network. Roughly 4 million of those barrels reportedly crossed the blockade, according to tanker trackers, a sign that Iran is still punching holes in Washington's strategy and keeping vital revenue flowing. Reports from tanker tracking firm tankertrackers.com conclude that the blockade has disrupted but not halted Iran's oil activity, forcing traffic into more complex and opaque routes. Instead of a full shutdown, Tehran has adapted by using alternative shipping lanes and covert logistics chains to sustain its exports through third-country intermediaries and difficult-to-monitor transfers. Vessels linked to Iran have reportedly succeeded in bypassing U.S. enforcement in the Strait of Hormuz region, according to a Wall Street Journal report on April 26, exposing gaps in the monitoring architecture. Experts say this pattern has underlined how difficult it is to fully seal off a vast and strategically critical waterway such as the Strait of Hormuz, even for a major naval power. Iran has also employed tactics such as disabling or manipulating ship tracking transponders, conducting ship-to-ship transfers at sea, and rerouting vessels through the Arabian Sea and Asian waters to evade detection. Analysts add that even when ships cannot leave the region, tankers can still be loaded with crude at Iranian ports and then later transferred at sea. Rather than a clear decisive victory, the situation has therefore evolved into a cat-and-mouse dynamic at sea, with Iran constantly adjusting its methods to keep exports moving. These developments came as President Trump announced that the US would use all its cards against Iran in the Hormuz zone.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.